So, you just clicked on this video. You're thinking, I want to know about Morgan Gibbs-White. Well, you clicked on the right video. Because it's about Morgan Gibbs-White. So, you would have hoped that it would be about that. Yeah, I'm not going to clickbait, So, yeah. Anyway, we're going to be discussing how he's got to where he is now. Why he is genuinely one of the best players I've seen play for us. Let's go back to the start. Rewind. So Morgan Gibbs-White would join Wolves at the age of 8. He would play at every youth level for the Molyneux club, and he would ultimately go on to make his Wolves debut against Stoke in the FA Cup at the age of just 16, Stoke being a Premier League team back then. He would make his league debut for Wolves in a 1-0 defeat to Wigan Athletic in the Championship, but ultimately this would be a more than successful season for Wolves in which they would reach 99 points, getting promoted back to the Premier League. But the big highlight of this season for Gibbs-White was taking part in England's Under-17 World Cup victory under the management of Steve Cooper. Morgan would score in 2 of the games on their way to the final, in the quarter-final against the United States, and a 5-2 victory against Spain. Gibbs-White would score in that match too. Gibbs-White would make his... My hat's wonky, isn't it? Gibbs-White would make his Premier League debut for Wolves in a 2-2 draw against Everton in Wolves' first game back in the Premier League since 2012. He would actually play quite a bit throughout this season, making 26 appearances in the league. However, 21 of those games would be from off the bench, so he wasn't an integral part of the side. He was very much a substitute player. And again, he would play for his national team in England's Under-19 Euro squad, in which they would get knocked out at the group stages after losing to France and Romania. Gibbs-White would feature in the final game against Croatia, in which England would be held to a 3-3 draw with Croatia. I just said Croatia twice. It would be in the 1920 season where he would really struggle to get game time. However, he would score his first goal for Wolves in this season in a 4-0 win in Europa League qualifying. Unfortunately, after playing a handful of games, he will get an injury in this season, keeping him out for a few months, ultimately meaning that he wouldn't really play much for the rest of the season, only really featuring in incredibly short cameos at the end of matches. So it would be during the 2021 season where Gibbs-White would sign a new deal at Wolves, a 3-year contract, and would be loaned to Championship side Swansea City, now managed by Steve Cooper. He would have a very strong, promising start to his time at Swansea, scoring on his debut, then making a full 90 minutes against Birmingham, and also assisting against Millwall. But it would also be in that Millwall game where Gibbs-White would get injured for so long that they would cancel his loan and he would return to Molyneux. So a very promising start at Swansea was cut short after just 6 matches. He would actually come straight back into the Wolves side. His first game available again for the team would be against Everton. But after that game, he would again become a bench player, and it would only really be towards the end of the season where he'd get any kind of regular game time again, particularly scoring his first Premier League goal, a last-minute winner at home to Brighton. But it would be in the 21-22 season where Gibbs-White would play a huge part in Sheffield United's playoff campaign, in which they went from the lower regions of the Championship to the playoffs, similar to a club that he now plays for. Gibbs-White would feature a few times for Wolves at the start of the season, particularly in a 4-0 win against Forest in the League Cup, in which he'd score. However, he would immediately score an assist on his Sheffield United debut in a 6-2 victory against Peterborough, then again scoring on his next match against Preston in a 2-2 draw. Straight away, he had established himself as a regular and a vitally important player in this Blades team. There would be a low moment for Gibbs-White in which he'd get sent off after a second yellow card against Millwall. That's the only time that he has actually been sent off in any game in his career. He'd also score again against Forest this season in the league in a 1-1 draw at the City Ground, in which they took the lead in that match until Lewis Gavin cancelled it out. Fast forward to February, and Gibbs-White would really start to play further forward rather than playing in midfield and attacking midfield or even out wide. He would genuinely start to play as a striker or a second striker, a shadow striker. And it would really affect his game even more. He'd start to score even more goals. The first game in which he did do this was against his old team Swansea, where he scored twice and assisted once in a 4-0 victory. This brilliant form from Gibbs-White would be a great reason as to why Sheffield United reached the playoffs. And by the end of the regular season, he'd have scored 11 goals and got 9 assists, where of course they would have to play Forest. And again, Morgan Gibbs-White would score against Forest in the second leg After Forest, of course, had taken a 2-goal advantage, 3-1 up on aggregate, Sheffield United made a very impressive attempt at coming back into the tie, Gibbs-White playing a big reason for that. So during this season, of course, there was plenty of interest for Gibbs-White, particularly from Forest. You would imagine that Wolves would want to try and keep hold of him, hence why they demanded so much money for him. Steve Cooper getting promoted with Forest, of course, he had a huge amount of interest in Gibbs-White, having played with him twice before. So Forest were one of the main candidates, the big candidate, and Forest would chase Gibbs-White all summer until they got their man on a £25 million deal, a deal that could potentially rise to £42 million. This would spark a huge amount of controversy and criticism as to why Forest had spent so much on a relatively unproven Premier League player, as to why they would do it in the first place. They were newly promoted a club. Why would they show ambition? I mean, they want to do well, that's why. Gibbs-White would be one of the 23 signings Forest made during this transfer window as a result of losing a lot of key personnel and just not having enough strength and depth to compete in the Premier League. As a result of this, the squad obviously had to gel and learn the Premier League at the same time, and Gibbs-White had a bit of a slow start to his life at Forest, but quite clearly had that talent immediately. As soon as he came onto the pitch against Everton on his debut, he had that flair, immediately mugging off a few Everton defenders. However, after game 14, he'd only have 2 assists to his name against Villa and Bournemouth. But again, even though Forest were struggling, he was still showing that there was a huge amount of potential to be unlocked. And it was before the World Cup where Forest in general would start to click into gear and show what they can do. And Gibbs-White was certainly one of them, scoring his first goal. A brilliant individual piece of skill, dribbling around a few Brentford players and scoring bottom corner, obviously, against Brentford. And then also the next week, it scored the winning goal against Crystal Palace. Coming back from the World Cup, and Forest in general will continue to get stronger and stronger, having gelled and learning the Premier League as they go along. And Gibbs-White would continue to show incredible form and incredible skill. Him and Brennan Johnson have formed a brilliant, exciting partnership in attack. And even though Morgan hasn't scored since those games before the World Cup, he's only continued to get better. He's assisted several times, particularly against Leicester, getting 2 assists for both the goals. The second one being one of the best goals I've seen this season at the City Ground in terms of how we got to scoring the goal. The work from Gibbs-White for this goal is truly outstanding. He created it all himself, doing acrobatic clearance, running onto his own clearance, mugging off a few Leicester players, and then a fantastic ball. Honestly, seeing it live really made you appreciate it more, because it was just a moment of genius. He doesn't necessarily need to be scoring goals to get headlines, to get fans off their seats, to be hailed as one of the most exciting players we've seen at the club for a very long time. We have some stars in this team now, but Gibbs-White is definitely the main one. His brilliant skill, his work rate, his pace, his vision, his movement on the ball, his link-up play with Brennan Johnson, it's a joy to watch. Absolutely brilliant footballer, and he's thoroughly justifying the fact that we paid £25 million for him. Arguably he's worth even more. Maybe not 42 million just yet, I don't know. But the fact that people were slagging him off at the start of the season for the fact that we paid that much for him, they're really starting to look a bit stupid now. And it's no surprise that the England senior team are now sniffing over him, wanting him to potentially be part of the side. Honestly, if I saw Morgan Gibbs-White play for England, he's not like a Forest youth player, he's not like Yates or Wall, but he's a Forest player. And obviously Henderson was called up to the England squad, but he's not actually our player, and he could be. But it would be phenomenal to see him play for my nation, my other team, basically. Absolute joy to watch. One of the most gifted players I've seen at Forest, and I just hope we can hold on to him for as long as possible. I just thought he deserved the video. He continues to get headlines each week, and I hope you've enjoyed this one. Please, if you have, hit the like button, subscribe to Rads if you're new. If you want me to do this to any other players, then I definitely will do. I want to continue to do more video essay style videos like this one, whether it's something massive like my Faraz one, or something a little bit more simple but still very interesting in player profiles, and I continue to do that. Hope you've enjoyed it, everyone. I'll see you very soon.